Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Ukraine's and Czech Republic's Education Sectors Today, International Education Market Updates, Trends and Developments. My name is Luke Bruce, and I am the Specialist, Virtual Marketing and International Initiatives at the BC Council for International Education, and I will be today's moderator. BCCIE is a provincial agency under the Ministry of Advanced Education, Skills and Training, advancing the interests of international education through the entire IE sector, including K-12, higher education, and the language sector. Thank you for joining us today on what promises to be an important presentation on two of BC's international education partners of Ukraine and the Czech Republic. Before we get started, and prior to introducing our presenters, it is important that I acknowledge that at BCCIE, we live and work on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenters for this morning. We are joined by Ms. Barbara Florkova, Trade Commissioner Assistant to the Embassy of Canada in Prague, Czech Republic, and Liliana Zhelina, Trade Commissioner at the Embassy of Canada in Kiev, Ukraine. All right, now please allow me to turn over the floor to our first presenter, Barbara.
Thank you. Okay, I think it should be working now. Good morning once again, everybody, and thank you very much, Tom and Luke, for inviting me to participate to this webinar. I think it's a very good opportunity for us to present Czech Republic and for you to learn more about Czech market and the opportunities. I would like to start the presentation with some basic facts on Czech Republic or Czechia. Czech Republic is a country situated in the Central Europe. Czechs also like to say about them that it's a heart of Europe. It's a country of 10.5 million inhabitants with the capital city of Prague. If you have never been to, I definitely recommend. It's beautiful, although right now it's a little complicated to get here, and maybe wait for a little later. Second biggest city of the Czech Republic is Brno, with almost 400,000 inhabitants. And the reason why I'm mentioning these two is that they are most important in terms of international education, most important markets. Official language is, of course, Czech, but there are foreign languages spoken. English is widely spoken. 12% of population speaks English in the Czech Republic, followed by German, then Slovak, which happens to be my mother tongue as well, and French ranks 6th, with only 1.07% of population speaking French. Literacy rate in the Czech Republic is almost 100. In terms of internet access, speaking of children and students, 97% of children in the Czech Republic have access to the internet at home, and 92% of them have either laptops or tablets at home, so they can learn online, which is very important in these days. Maybe you were wondering whether there is something that Czech Republic and Canada have in common. There definitely is. These two countries have historical long-standing ties. Canada has sheltered political refugees from former Czechoslovakia during the communist era in 1948 and 1968. So there is a big group of Canadians that have Czech origins or claim Czech origins. It's around 100,000, and the biggest groups live around Toronto and Vancouver. Actually, the second biggest Czech diaspora after US is in Canada. Czechs and Canadians also share passion for ice hockey. And I think both nations love nature. I'm also told that Czechs and Canadians have a similar sense of humor. I cannot say, to be honest. I haven't got any proof yet, so maybe once you have some Czech students, you can see. Education system, I would like to give you a very brief overview because it's a little different than the system in Canada. In Czech Republic, we don't have a K-12 system as it is known in Canada. Although it is similar, let's say, compulsory education starts at the age of 6 at either elementary or primary schools, and is for 9 years. So it's until 14 or 15 of the age. Usually, elementary or primary education is divided into 2 stages: first 4 years, and then the year 5 from year 5 to year 9. This is followed by secondary education, usually 4 years. We have 2 types of schools, either schools where students study for 3 years. Studies are usually finished with some kind of apprenticeship certificate. These students usually do not go to universities, do not follow to universities. And then we have 4 years more general education focused schools where studies are finished by school leaving exam, and these are the schools that prepare students for studying at university. In terms of post-secondary or tertiary education, we have universities. We don't have colleges as you know them in Canada. These are called tertiary professional schools. And they are not as popular here in the Czech Republic as colleges are in Canada. Universities are definitely most preferred options for tertiary or post-secondary education. Studying abroad, approximately 12,000 Czechs study abroad every year. And according to the recent survey from 2020, the beginning of the year, 1/3 of young Czechs from high schools would like to study abroad. Canada represents a very small portion of this number. According to the statistics by IRCC from December 2019, there were 200 study permits issued to young Czechs. However, I would like to mention here that this is the official number, and this includes only those students studying in Canada for more than 6 months. Because if you study less than 6 months, you do not necessarily need a study permit. So let's say 1 semester students or shorter term students are not included in this number. According to the unofficial information I have from agencies, it could be 100 plus more. So let's say 300 plus Czechs every year in Canada. According to the survey that was conducted among high school students at the biggest education fair that takes place here in the Czech Republic, it took place in January 2020. The most popular study abroad destinations for young Czechs are still UK, US, and the third is Germany. However, Canada also ranked quite well. Canada ranked 6th, and Canada is becoming more and more popular destination for studying abroad. Why is it so? Why do Czechs choose Canada for studying abroad? Czechs consider Canada a stable and safe country. This is the advantage in comparison to some other that were mentioned before in the ranking. And also, let's see if anything changes maybe after tonight or tomorrow. Big advantage of Canada is languages and the fact that Canada is bilingual, so Czechs can study either in English or in French. Also, multicultural society, that is something that attracts Czech, because this is something that is that we do not have here. They would like to have the international experience. For some of them, sports and mainly hockey is important, and the reason why they decide they want to study in Canada, they also want to play hockey there. And as I already mentioned, Czechs love nature, they love winter sports, they love hiking, they love mountains, Canadian national parks. And if you would ask Czech, just a random Czech about Canada, they would probably tell you that they would love to go to British Columbia, because this is the most popular province among Czechs, like speaking of Canada. Not only nature, but also big cities are something that is attracting Czechs, whether it's Toronto, whether it's Vancouver. etc. So it is hard to say what do they prefer more, whether it's studying in big cities or studying in smaller communities. It's both. It always depends. One factor that is not mentioned on the slide, but it's very important, is cost of studies, because Canada and Canadian education institutions offer world-class quality and very good quality education for that is more affordable than, for example, education in the US. So this is also another thing that plays in favor of Canada. What types of institutions or programs do Czechs choose when they consider Canada? I would say, in general, all of them. You have students who would like to study in high schools. Here we are talking about kids between 14 to 18, maybe sometimes even younger, but from my experience, parents usually do not have a tendency to send younger kids abroad. To study abroad in Canada is quite far. So I would say this age range. Most of them usually chooses Canada for the experience, of course, improving of the language skills. So it's mainly either one semester on one year experience at the host family at Canadian high school. Some of them want to study at Canadian high school because they want to study at Canadian universities, but this is more rare in the Czech Republic. Czechs are also interested in studying at Canadian colleges or universities. Here we are again speaking about, let's say, high school students in last years of high school, so 17, 18 and older. Here the cost factor is very important because if Czechs want to or decide to study a full program, diploma or degree at Canadian education institution, they are usually looking for scholarship opportunities. It is not easy for average Czech family to pay tuition fees for the university studies in Canada. So I am very often contacted by Czech students who were already accepted by a Canadian university, but are unfortunately not able to pay the tuition fees. So really they are looking for any type of financial support or scholarships. On the other hand, exchange program is a student already at Czech University is cheaper or less financially or more affordable option, let's say, and there exist many bilateral agreements between Czech and Canadian universities, allowing exchanges of students. So this could be a way for universities and colleges also how to enter Czech market. And last but not least, language schools. The information I have from agents, from the survey that I've done some time ago, is that usually it's students at the age of like around 17 who are interested in studying at language schools abroad and in Canada. But the average age of student is 25 years. And what are they interested in? It's mainly study and work programs because they want to, on one hand, of course, improve their language skills. On the other hand, they would like to gain some work experience from abroad that looks good on their CV and can help them potentially in their future career. So how to enter Czech market? First of all, I would recommend education agents. I'm in very close contact with them. I have a very good list of contacts that I can share with you after this webinar. Most of them focus mainly on high schools and language schools, but there are some that also focus on colleges and universities. Czechs choose them because it's the easiest way for them. They basically get the full package, let's say full service. Agents know Canada, they know schools, they can recommend what's the best school depending on what are the requirements of the family of a child. And they are also very important point of contact for Czechs, because still the generation of parents of children at the age of 15, let's say 15 to 18, many of them do not speak English, so they need someone really to be there for them if anything goes wrong, to be able to communicate either with school or for a child as well. Then, as I already mentioned, via partnerships with local education institutions, Czech universities are very keen on partnering with Canadian universities, whether it is for students, professors, exchanges, or research projects. I also have a long list of Czech universities and their international relations offices contacts that I will be more than happy to share with you, and also to recommend if you'd be interested in partnering with local universities. And then, of course, directly, you can recruit Czech students at education fairs. The one that is taking in a week, and very first one for the Czech Republic, very first one, a virtual EduCanada fair, taking place next week, November 9th and 10th. I believe it will be a great opportunity to recruit Czech students, to meet Czech students, to see what are their expectations, to get to know the market better. We've been promoting this on our social media among students, schools, universities, so we hope it will be a success. Then there is an education fair that I already mentioned at the very beginning, that the survey among high school students come from. It's called Gaudeamus. It's the biggest education fair in the Czech Republic, and it is focused on post-secondary and lifelong learning. So this would be probably the best opportunity to recruit students for university studies or let's say language school. This fair takes place again in two biggest cities of the Czech Republic, Prague and Brno. In Prague, it is always in January, in Brno in November. The one in Prague in 2020 in January fortunately took place. The November one had to be cancelled due to the current situation. Prague 2021 is still planned, so we will see how the situation evolves. But these two fairs in total welcome almost 60,000 visitors, and most of them is high school students of last 2 years of high school, so kids at the age of 17, 18, those who are making their decision about their future, their university studies. Some of them want to take maybe 1 year break and study just language abroad and work. So again, then opportunity for language schools, for example. I also have very good contact with organizers, so I can share that contact with you in case you are interested. COVID-19, unfortunately, this is something that has been having impact on our life, our business this year, and also on education. Maybe I will just very briefly give you some information on what the situation is in the Czech Republic. Unfortunately, Czech Republic, based on the information from last week, had the highest death rate on COVID and the second highest, according to the latest information, the second highest infection rate in Europe. People tested last week, basically 54% of tested were tested positive. And because of this, country is in the state of emergency as of October 5th already, and this has been so far prolonged until November 20th. What does it mean? Basically, we're under lockdown, so almost everything is closed, like you cannot go to restaurant, bars, cinema. People or companies are recommended to switch to working from home. Only the most important, like groceries, pharmacy, drugstores are open. Curfew has been imposed, so it basically means we cannot leave our homes between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. We have to wear face masks everywhere in the interior and also outside. And this is most likely to last until Christmas, but let's see. Some positive news is that in last 2 days we have seen some decrease in new COVID cases, so let's see. In spite of these facts, borders are still open, but they are open only for essential travel, and conditions on entering the country are different for each country. It depends whether country is among the high risk or low risk countries. Canada remains on the list of low risk countries, what means that Canadians can travel to the Czech Republic, but again only for essential reasons, essential travel, without the need of COVID-19 test or quarantine. Among essential travel, essential reasons could be also studying. And what's the impact of COVID-19 on education sector? Like in the Czech Republic, schools are closed and everything was moved to distance learning and online platforms. Czech government invested heavily in the purchase of IT equipment for schools to enable them to teach online. It is a challenge for everybody. It is not something we were used to. Education institutions still accept international students. That's what I mentioned in the previous slide, that it is still possible for students to travel to Czech Republic. And how has COVID-19 changed the view of Czechs of studying abroad and international education? 10% of Czechs decided to cancel their planned study abroad stays due to COVID-19 and the uncertainty caused by COVID-19. Many of them still want to study abroad. I've been in touch during the summer with many education agents and also students, of course, those who wanted to study in Canada. Unfortunately, during the summer period, basically their study permits were not approved or were on hold, what meant for them that they weren't able to start their studies or their semesters in September 2020. I know that Canadian education institutions were trying to offer online learning to Czechs to solve the situation in the meantime, or by the time they will be able to travel to Canada again. Unfortunately, online learning is not a preferred option of Czechs, because the main reason why they decide to study in Canada, or for parents, why they decide to send their children to study in Canada, is that hands-on experience from the country, and online learning cannot substitute this. And unfortunately, I think it meant for some of them that they basically decided to cancel their study stays. However, there were some changes and new measures adopted by IRCC as of October 20th. And just yesterday, I've heard good news from a student that I had during the summer, that finally his study permit application has been approved, and he should be able to leave tomorrow and start his semester or continue his semester in Canada. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the situation will not get worse and things will only get better. And with this hopefully positive news, I would like to finish my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. In case of any questions, do not hesitate to contact me via email. I can also, as I mentioned, share all the lists of contacts with you. And you can also follow our mission, Embassy of Canada, on Facebook or on Twitter. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Barbara. All right, and allow me now to turn over the floor to Liliana Jelina.
Thank you. So thank you so much, Tom and Luke, for inviting me to this event. It's a great pleasure to be able to connect with so many educational institutions from British Columbia. My name is Liliana Zhilina. I'm a trade commissioner with the Embassy of Canada to Ukraine, where I cover a number of sectors, including education, fish and seafood, agri-food, and consumer products. So today I will give you a brief overview of the education market in Ukraine and student recruitment opportunities in the market. So I will start with some key facts on Ukraine. Ukraine is a large country in Eastern Europe with a population of 40 million people. Our capital city is Kiev, and the official language is Ukrainian. Russian remains widely spoken, but when it comes to the development of promo materials or official messaging, like promo messaging on social media, it's highly recommended to use Ukrainian. In terms of literacy rate, Ukraine is actually a very educated country with 100% literacy rate among youngest generations. Ukraine also boasts a large student population with over 5.5 million of secondary and post-secondary students. Also, Ukraine is ranked 4th in the world in the number of people with higher education. It is a very interesting fact because up until very recently, Ukrainians prefer to avoid sending their kids anywhere else other than universities. Just like in Czech Republic, in Ukraine, post-secondary education or post-secondary degree can only be obtained from a university. And colleges in Ukraine are vocational schools, essentially, that provide career education for future blue-collar workers. So many Ukrainian families prefer not to send their kids to colleges in Ukraine, mainly because of the low salaries that are offered to blue-collar workers in Ukraine. So that is why Ukrainian parents would rather send their kid to a low-rated university in Ukraine rather than to a good college. Over the course of past years, Ukrainians become, well-versed in the importance and value of international education, and more young Ukrainians choose to pursue their post-secondary studies abroad. So right now, about 8.5% of all Ukrainian students at post-secondary level study abroad. And in fact, Ukraine has seen a huge increase in number of Ukrainians studying abroad. Let's say between 2009 and 2017, there was a 320% increase. So that's pretty impressive. In 2019, according to the research conducted by a Ukrainian think tank, there were about 77,000 Ukrainian students studying abroad. Their favorite study destinations are Poland, Russia, Germany, Canada, Czech Republic, Italy, the United States, Spain, Austria, France, and Slovakia. All of these countries are mentioned in the order of priority. So you can actually see that Canada is number 4 study destination and is only outpaced by 3 other countries, mainly because of the cost of education. The popularity of international education has resulted into the development of a robust network of education agents in Ukraine. They are scattered across Ukraine and work with a variety of destinations. Most of them prefer to focus on the so-called expensive destinations, and Canada is essentially one of them. Others prefer to focus on Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, countries with more affordable tuition fees, because this way they're able to send more students abroad. So there's this conflict, I would say. You can either send big numbers of students abroad, but then get a lower commission, or you can send smaller numbers of students abroad, but then your commission is significantly higher. So most Ukrainian education agents are really looking to work with Canadian educational institutions. So let's talk a little bit about Canada's brand in Ukraine and what you can expect being representatives of Canadian educational institutions. So right now in Canada, there's about 1.3 million of Canadians of Ukrainian origin. And people-to-people ties are incredibly strong between Canada and Ukraine. Just for your awareness, I've listed some provinces with the largest Ukrainian population. And you can actually see that Ukrainians tend to choose Ontario, British Columbia, and the prairies, the middle part of Canada. The ties are so strong that in Canada there's a separate organization that works and essentially helps Ukrainian students who study in Canada. The name of this organization is Ukrainian Canadian Students. It's SASCLER, Ukrainian Canadian Students Union, and they help Ukrainian students get internships, scholarships, helps Ukrainian students get settled in Canada, so provides all sorts of support that they may need upon their arrival in Canada. These strong ties, people-to-people ties, resulted in incredibly strong connection between the countries at the political, economic level. For example, Canada was the first Western country to recognize Ukraine's independence back in 1991. Canada and Ukraine are working on the development of their trade relationship. That is why Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement came into force in 2017. And last but not least, Ukraine is one of 25 countries of focus for Canada's development assistance, meaning that Canada invests in development of various social and business projects in Ukraine. So that being said, Canada has an extremely positive image in Ukraine. There are no misconceptions or stereotypes related to Canada. Canada is seen as a big friend, and when Ukrainians have sufficient funds to go abroad, they always look at studying in Canada. So when it comes to Canada as a study destination, it is extremely popular with Ukrainian students. It is actually a very interesting coincidence, the fact that Canada is #4 preferred destination for Ukrainian students who choose to study abroad, and the fact that Ukraine is #4 source market of international students for Canada in Europe. So right now, Ukraine is outpaced by the UK, France, and Germany. So it is a pretty important student market, as you can see. It is interesting that Canada is so popular that it outpaced the US and the UK and Australia. In Ukraine, this trend started, I believe, around 2014, and it keeps growing. Before COVID, there were about 50 Canadian educational institutions that were actively recruiting in the market. When I say actively recruiting, I mean that the representatives would come to Ukraine at least once a year for education fairs, for meetings with education agents, for some customized events of their own, or similar student recruitment events like networking conferences, let's say ISEF Ukraine. Right now, obviously, travels are not allowed, so most of these educational institutions try to engage online, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So the key reason for Ukrainians to choose studies in Canada is actually the fact that Canada is a very prosperous, safe country where they see good immigration potential. So for most Ukrainians who choose to go to Canada for studies, it is just a pathway to smooth immigration and integration in the Canadian society. Ukrainians tend to choose short-term programs, mainly at colleges, because these programs are cheaper, they are shorter, and they allow them to go straight into the labor market. In many cases, Ukrainians who go to study to Canada already hold a post-secondary education degree from a Ukrainian university. That is why they don't want to spend another 4 or 5 years at a Canadian university. When it comes to Ukrainian students who just have a school diploma, some of them do consider studying at Canadian universities. Obviously, they're still looking for affordable programs, but there is a good potential for Canadian universities in the market as well. I would say that there's a certain number of Ukrainian families that don't care about the costs at all. They can afford anything, any type of programs, and they're ready to pay for they're ready to pay tuition fees of the most prestigious universities. But in most cases, Ukrainians do consider tuition fees as the key decisive factor when they make a decision on an educational institution in Canada. The most popular provinces for Ukrainians to study are Ontario and British Columbia, though lately Ukrainians have been looking for affordable educational institutions, and they don't really care anymore about the location of these institutions as long as they can afford tuition fees. So I guess this coincides with Barbara's point on the importance of the size of tuition fees. I prepared some RSSC stats for you to give you a flavor of the size of the market. So on the left side of the slide, you can see the information on the number of Ukrainians holding a valid study permit on December 31st of respective years from 2012 to 2019. These numbers do not include students who came to Canada for study programs shorter than 6 months. As Barbara already explained, these students come on visitor visa. That's why they're not reflected on study permit stats. And on the right side of the slide, you can see the information on the number of applications received by the migration section of our embassy, and also the information on the approval rates for every single year. One more comment on the peak of student numbers between 2014 and 2017. It had to do with the fact that in Ukraine in 2013, 2014, there was a revolution of dignity, and many Ukrainian families didn't feel secure about the political and economic situation in the country. So they preferred to send their kids away, to send them abroad, to safe countries like Canada. And after 2017, you can see that the numbers dropped a little bit, which once again has to do with the fact that the situation in the country became more stable, and Ukrainians were not scared, so to speak, anymore of keeping their kids in the country. The drop was not significant, and we actually expected the numbers to remain at this level prior to COVID. With the current situation, I think the numbers will drop a little bit because Canada's borders were closed for a while, and some students, similar to Czech Republic, canceled on their plans to go to Canada because they didn't like the idea of studying online. So now let's talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on Ukraine. In fact, the number of cases is growing in Ukraine, and as you can see, the number of active cases is huge. The total number of cases is more than 400,000. So that's a lot, and the trend is terrifying. In fact, we get about 9,000 people infected every day. This probably has to do with the fact that there's no lockdown in Ukraine, despite the trend. Restaurants, cinemas, shopping malls remain open. People don't respect social distancing, don't like staying at home, and because of their active social life, they spread the disease. There are some gossips that the lockdown, or at least partial lockdown, may be introduced next week, but so far these are just gossips. And in fact, the closure of restaurants and shopping malls and stores, other than essential stores, can result in a wave of protests. That's something that happened in April this year when the government made a decision to close everything down. Lots of owners of small businesses protested next to the governmental buildings demanding for the reopening of their enterprises, because people were on the verge of nervous breakdown. They literally could not make any money during this period of time. So a similar situation may occur next week or a bit later if the government makes a decision to introduce a complete lockdown once again. Right now, the country is divided into 3 zones: green, orange, and red, depending on the number of COVID cases in a specific region. And the schools and universities operate according to the rules introduced for specific zones. Overall, Ukrainians are not satisfied with online education. This relates to both online education offered by local schools and universities, and this also applies to online education offered by Canadian and other international educational institutions. Similarly to Czech students, Ukrainians choose to study in Canada because they want to get this hands-on experience. They want to live in Canada, they want to integrate in the society, and once again they want to get their postgraduate work permit to be able to work in Canada upon graduation. And even though RCC did promise that online studies would not impact the duration of postgraduate work permits, Ukrainians were not happy with the fact that Canada closed its borders. That's why some of them canceled their plans to go to Canada. And we lost some students. Another reason why some Ukrainian students decided not to pursue studies online was that some competitors, like the UK, for instance, kept their borders open for international students, and some students who were planning to go to Canada changed their minds and shifted towards other destinations. So there was a very strong competition from other countries during past 6 months. Right now, as you know, Canada is reopening the borders, and educational institutions who follow the guidelines on prevention of COVID-19 are allowed to accept international students. So my RCC colleagues at the embassy are working on approvals of visa applications. For the past months, they were issuing only the so-called visa pre-approvals. Essentially, they informed people that when Canada reopens the borders, they would most likely receive a visa. So right now, they're working on this final processing stages and providing people with visas. So a couple of tips on market entry strategies. So some ideas that may be useful when you plan to enter the Ukrainian market. As I've already mentioned, Ukraine is an agent-driven market, and if you want to be successful in the Ukrainian market, it is important to connect with local agencies. There are lots of education agents across Ukraine in various regions. They vary in sizes. So I think that the best strategy, especially for the newcomers in the market, would be to engage with several agents located in different regions of Ukraine, just to be able to assess which region works best for you. Just to give you an example, when I talk to Canadian educational institutions, almost all of them have very different ideas and impressions on different regions of Ukraine. So let's say for some of them, Dnipro is a gem because they get lots of students from this city, they get lots of attention. For some educational institutions, this city doesn't produce any student population. So you never know until you try. That is why it is important to diversify and work with agents from different regions to see what region is a good match for your educational institution. Another important tip is to participate or co-host, participate in events or co-host events. Ukraine boasts a large number of education fairs. They are organized across the country. Now, obviously, all agents shifted to the online mode. So it is important to participate in these events to raise brand awareness in Ukraine and also to solidify your relationships with local agents, because they love when their foreign partners attend their events. Another good idea may be to host your own event. Actually, lots of Canadian educational institutions like this format very much. They do customized events in collaboration with education agents and attract the type of audience that is looking for programs offered by their institutions. So this way, obviously, you won't be able to talk to hundreds of families. This is something that happens at large education fairs, but you end up talking to a smaller number of families, but those who are quite serious about studying at your educational institution. So both formats are useful. You can practice participating in both of them. Another popular way of student recruitment in the country is actually hiring an in-country representative in Ukraine. Many Canadian institutions have in-country representatives because they speak the local language, because they're located in the market and they can do a lot of events, multiple events, and of course because this way they can save some funds on travel expenses. Quite often, these in-country representatives cover not only Ukraine, but the entire region, like some Eastern European countries and Asian countries as well. Since Ukraine is a cost-sensitive market, scholarships are always very, very welcome. I think I made it quite clear. An interesting fact is that in many cases, students are looking for scholarships not only because tuition fees of Canadian educational institutions are a serious financial burden for them, but also because getting a scholarship from an international educational institution is, something very, I would say, something very pleasant, something that they could be proud of. So sometimes it's just a matter of prestige for some students. So even if you're able to offer a scholarship of 500 Canadian or 1,000 Canadian, it will be very warmly received by prospective Ukrainian students. Some of you may be also aware that Ukraine is an important part of Canada's international education strategy that was released last year. So very soon, Global Affairs Canada will introduce scholarships for Ukrainian students who will be studying in Canada between 2021 and 2025. I don't have a lot of details to share on this right now, but in a couple of weeks, I expect to receive some guidelines from Global Affairs Canada on this, and of course I will be pleased to share them with you to ensure that you use this fact as an important selling point during your conversations with Ukrainian students. Another important point is that you should be prepared for competition. I think this applies to any market you go to, but in Ukraine, when you recruit students, you compete not only with other countries, but you also compete with your colleagues from other Canadian educational institutions. And it is important to be prepared for all sorts of tricky questions from Ukrainian students and Ukrainian parents. So you should have a bunch of selling points right on top of your mind to be able to convince the families that you are the best match. So the major questions that they will be asking you will be related to tuition fees, will be related to employment rate upon graduation. So if you have these stats at your disposal, they would be very important for conversations with Ukrainian students. If you organize job fairs, if you have co-op programs, that is very important as well. So the more selling points you mention to them at the very beginning, the more chances you get to capture their attention and then convince them to enter your educational institution. And last but not least, Ukrainian universities remain very much interested in partnerships with Canadian educational institutions. So they're open to partnerships both with colleges and universities. So if you're interested in student exchange or joint research, please let me know. I can introduce you to the right contacts in the Ukrainian market. The same applies to the local agents in Ukraine. I work closely with all of them. So if you're looking for a list of local education agents, please drop me a line. I'll be happy to share it with you. And since we're all living in this online mode these days, I prepared a brief slide on online promotion and some ideas that may be useful for you. So Ukrainians are crazy about social media. They're extremely active on social media, and the two top social networks are Facebook and Instagram. I shared some stats with you just to give you an idea of how popular these social media are, especially among young people. So I don't want to read all the stats. You can read them on your own. But I presented this just to prompt you an idea that it is really important to place your promos in social media. I think that most of you have already used the paid promo options offered by social networks. They're indeed very, very efficient in Ukraine. So, if you have interesting content to promote, if you have good social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, don't hesitate to promote them with the Ukrainian audience. They will be very well received. And from the experience of our embassy and my own experience, when you want to recruit people for events, this was actually this rule applied even to the pre-COVID reality. Social media have always been the most efficient way to reach the Ukrainian audience. So now with COVID, social media have become even more important. Another important tip is, of course, participation in virtual fairs and webinars. In the past, fairs and webinars used to be organized offline. Now they're all moved online. So Barbara has already mentioned an upcoming EduCanada virtual fair taking place on November 9th and 10th. I'm not sure if it's still possible to sign up for it, but if it's possible, I think it will be a perfect opportunity for you to get a taste of the Ukrainian market. Another upcoming virtual event is organized by a Ukrainian education agency that's called Atlas Education. It is held on November 14th, and I think it is still possible to register for it. So once again, if you're interested, just drop me a line and I will introduce you to organizers. Back in September and October, there were a couple of other virtual fairs that were extremely popular with the Ukrainian audience. So Ukrainians feel at ease when they need to participate in virtual events. And of course, there's a lot of point in doing online promotion. If you are considering doing an online event of your own, I think it is really important to think of the ways how you can make it different from other online events. Because these days Ukrainians are invited to all sorts of online webinars, conferences, fairs, and so on and so forth. So if you can do something small, but something that will make your event distinctive and memorable, please go for it. It will definitely pay off. In fact, our embassy will be organizing some events in the coming months. Frankly speaking, during summer, we put education promotion on hold, so to speak, just because there was no certainty around the immigration rules and travel policies to Canada. Now that the borders are reopening, of course, it makes a lot of sense to start promotion once again. So we will be doing some interesting events. Stay tuned, please. And of course, we will be using the same approach. We will try to make sure that our events are different from others. Just to give you an example of how creative we can be, and all of us can be, I want to show you the last slide of my presentation. So these are the examples of events that we did for the fish and seafood sector a couple of weeks ago. So we did some online events and delivered 3D goggles to our participants to show them a little bit of Canada. That had a symbolic meaning. We said, like, though you cannot travel to Canada right now, we did our best to showcase Canada's beauty to you through 3D videos. We also did some promo videos. As you can see in the top right corner, this is the video with Ambassador. I decided not to show you the video because it's not really related to the education sector, but we did prepare this video and then shared it online. And ordered promo posts on Facebook. We reached a very big audience in Ukraine. And last but not least, we organized a virtual fair. And in fact, we used the same platform that will be used for the upcoming EduCanada virtual fair on November 9th and 10th, and it was extremely successful. So the software is very user-friendly, and it proved to be very efficient during communications of exhibitors and visitors. So that being said, challenges like COVID make our lives difficult, but at the same time, they help us reveal our creativity and come up with some new non-conventional solutions and promotion projects. I will be pleased to receive your questions or provide you with customized advice by email, or we can schedule individual consultations after this event. Please get in touch with me. You can see my email on the slide right now. Please follow our embassy's updates on Facebook and Twitter. We post a lot of interesting things. Thank you for your attention.